All right, hello, good evening, and welcome into a Tuesday edition of KC Sports Tonight. And boy, Gabe, do we have a big one for you because we have some big-time stadium news with the Kansas City Royals, but it doesn't have to do with them moving anywhere. It has to do with their home field out there at Kauffman Stadium. Today, the Royals announced that for the majority of the ballpark, they are moving the outfield fences 10 feet in. Gabe, can you kind of tell us a little bit about this plan and maybe some of your thoughts?
Yeah, it seems like kind of an out of nowhere thing, but they spoke extensively today. Basically, a half an hour of JJ Piccolo and Dr. Mack, who's one of their vice president of
Analytics.
Baseball research and development analytics. Technically, it's an assistant GM title, so he's in the front office. Essentially, was tasked with researching park factors of how moving the field or the fences in at Kauffman Stadium would impact things. It sounds like, based on the way that he was speaking, that they tinkered with potential fence changes of so many different kinds to try to figure out what was the best way to, and in their words, bring Kauffman Stadium to more of a neutral park. And this is a super complex, in-the-weeds discussion as far as a lot of people want to say, like, oh, Kauffman Stadium is a pitcher's ballpark because it's a very large – it has the largest outfield in Major League Baseball, and it's either or one or two along with Coors Field, which has to be large because of the altitude in Colorado. But analytically speaking – it is considered a hitter. It grades out as a hitter's ballpark for certain metrics of like doubles, triples, because there's so much space for the ball to land. So if teams come into Kauffman and they don't have a good defensive outfield, the ball inevitably hits the ground a little bit more. It doesn't necessarily result in home runs, and I think that's what's going to change off of this. But it's a super complex thing. I would recommend people, if you have an opinion about this change, I would recommend going and listening to what Piccolo and Max said today, because almost any of the questions that you have or the opinions that you have of it can be at least either altered or informed by what they said today. Do you think that's fair?
I don't know if I would necessarily agree with that, but what I will say, maybe big picture-wise, if you're a fan at home, you're kind of wondering what's going on, I think you maybe need to know the dimensions of the ballpark. So the foul poles are still going to be right there where they've been for a long, long time, 330 feet. Dead center field is still going to remain at 410 feet, but the big news is close to the foul lines, those walls are going to come in 10 feet closer, and it's going to kind of go that way into the power alleys. The power alleys used to be, I believe, 387. 387. Now they're going to be 379. Those are going to be a little bit closer, but it still will kind of continue back to that deeper part of center field. And also another big thing is the walls are going down from 10 feet to 8 feet because in addition to wanting to see more home runs, the Royals also want to see more home run robberies. Now today, the Royals, just as Gabe said, this is something that they've been talking about, at least they've said internally, for a very, very long time. Actually, today I asked GM JJ Piccolo, was there a singular moment in time that you guys kind of said there was, hey, like, we need to move these fences in? And I was kind of expecting him to say, maybe last year, maybe in the month of June when the Royals didn't win a single game at home and they were really struggling to score runs, or maybe another time where they've had like a big problem to generate offense and get runs across home plate. But that's not what he talked about. He talked about a moment from more than a decade ago. He talked about the American League wildcard game in 2014. It's a play that's really burned into many Royals fans' memories. The Royals, I believe, were down 8-7 in the 7th or 8th inning. Late in that game, Eric Hosmer hits a long fly ball to center field or left field, and instead of going out, the outfielders collide. It's a triple, and we all know what happened. The Royals go on to win the game eventually. But JJ Piccolo talked about that play, and he's like, with these new dimensions that we have, that play would have been a home run. And that really opened my eyes because that play was 11 seasons ago. So this is not something that the Royals just baked up in this last offseason. This isn't something that they've baked up in the last couple of years. This is clearly something that they've been thinking about for a very long time. But Gabe, my real problem with today's press conference and many things that were coming out of JJ Piccolo's mouth and also the assistant GM that was with him was they kept talking about a word called fairness. They said, we want to play in a ballpark that is fair. We just want to have a fair ballpark. And to me, I had a big issue with that, and obviously this is my personal opinion, but who set up Kauffman Stadium? The Kansas City Royals. Who said it's not like the Major League Baseball came into the Royals organization and said, you have to build a stadium of this size. You have to build a ballpark of this dimensions. Like, the Royals have been in control of the dimensions of their ballpark for the entire time. And also, it's not necessarily that, I mean, they're like, hey, it's hard for us when we play at home and we go on the road. When you play at Kauffman Stadium, there are two teams playing there. It's not like one team, the fences are 20 feet in, and for the Royals, they're 20 feet further. The dimensions are the same for both teams playing the game. And Gabe, just to me, it was very, at least for me, a little disheartening to hear management of a team talk about an unfair environment in their own environment.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on that?
Let me counter. Let me provide. I think this is good because me and you have it. I feel like we are disagreeing pretty strongly on this, but I can understand that opinion. I thought that of all of the things that they said, one of the things that I would object to the most is the comments about fairness. With that being said, no one in the Royals front office, whether it's ownership or management, in terms of J.J. Piccolo, Mac, all of their assistant GMs, to John Sherman himself, none of them built Kauffman Stadium. None of them were the ones who instituted the ballpark being this way. I actually think that the question was asked about whether this would be something that is a 5-year experiment for a future ballpark or the next Royals Stadium. And Mac made the point that because of the way that wind works through the Truman Sports Complex, the 387 in the gaps, and I had never seen this before, but on the actual renderings that they put out today, not only is it 410 to dead center, but like just probably 15 to 20 feet to the left and right of dead center, it's still 405. And he was saying that the wind makes it play 10 feet further. So essentially, by bringing the fences in 10 feet, you're bringing it to, based on the wind more often than not blowing in or swirling in because of the way that crown vision and all of that kind of plays, you are bringing it to a more neutral rather than it being 400 feet essentially to dead left center field, and we see so many home runs die at that stage. I thought that one of the most agreeable points or things that I hadn't necessarily thought of was one. I don't remember who asked the question, but someone posed the question: the allure of Kauffman Stadium being the largest outfield in baseball and other opposing teams having to bend to that when they come here. You're losing that. Was there any thought to that? And J.J. Piccolo said, well, the way that we see it, the way that it has played out more often than not, is teams come in and they're just playing 3 games and they just go, oh, okay, like we'll deal with it. They just play the way that they normally play and the results fall as they may. Some teams are built so poorly, so unathletic in the outfield that it impacts them, and then the way that they swing the bats offensively, they don't necessarily think, oh, I've got to really muster a little extra to get home runs out of here. Whereas it sounds like, and I thought that one of the players that they were alluding to of it takes people time to get used to the ballpark was Jonathan India, a guy who came to Kansas City, and we saw a lot of flyouts to deep left field that were probably home runs at Great American Ballpark and are not home runs here. All of that is to say, I watched the Royals go on the road to Yankee Stadium or Fenway Park or all of these other parks that have plus hitting metrics or plus power metrics, and the Royals don't exactly have a home run derby when they go to Yankee Stadium. And I think that what Piccolo and them were saying is more often than not, the way that they think about hitting at home is also the way that they think about it on the road, and that leads to what we saw last year, which is a team that leads baseball in singles, but they were not very good at extra base hitting. And so I think with all of that factored in, with the fact that Bobby Witt Jr.'s power grades out as really positive to the opposite field, and we see that lead to a lot of just doubles. I mean, he led the league in doubles last year. This is a positive for them. So I grade out as I don't think this is groundbreaking. I don't think this is going to like fundamentally change the Royals. You're not going to necessarily see Kyle Isbell hit 20 home runs, but I think it's a slight positive, and I don't think it's the end of the world in either direction.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to wait and see how this plays out. I mean, obviously, there's a flip side to this. If the Royals are going to hit more home runs, obviously, so are the other teams. You think about how the Royals are constructed. I mean, Seth Lugo is a fly ball pitcher. Noah Cameron is a finesse pitcher that doesn't necessarily blow people away. Like, the Royals have built themselves to have, obviously, the biggest ballpark in the major leagues. And today they said this decision, it really isn't going to impact their roster construction. But for me, I hate this is purely my opinion. This is not the opinion of KCTV5. What I was hearing today, when I hear the fairness, it's like it was just a loser mentality. You can't complain about something being unfair in the home field that you set up, that you are in control of. So maybe, obviously, the Royals felt that they were playing at a competitive disadvantage with the current dimensions of their home ballpark, and they wanted to make a change. But just as you said, when the Royals go to Yankee Stadium, it's not like they go there and have a home run derby. On the flip side of that, when the Yankees come to Kauffman Stadium, I mean, sure, there are some home runs that don't lead the ballpark, but let's not forget, like, Aaron Judge hit like a 470-foot home run off Noah Cameron. Like, I don't care where the fences are, that ball was getting out of the ballpark. Yeah. It's the rule. I mean, to sit there to me and come out and say like, oh, we want a fair ballpark when it's your own home stadium is just antithetical to competition. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, but I'm very hopeful to see maybe how this will impact the team, because one player that they said was most negatively impacted by the dimensions was the Royals' best player and superstar shortstop Bobby Witt Jr. And they specifically said that with the new dimensions of the ballpark, they think they'll be able to tap more into his opposite field power. But again, if we're tapping into Bobby's opposite field power, we're tapping into everyone else's. It's not like I'm not necessarily sure that this move is going to translate into wins or a big improvement for the Royals, but these certainly are the dimensions that they're committed to for the duration of their lease at Kauffman Stadium, which is going to run here for the next 5 years. So it's going to be interesting to see.
The last thing that I would say is, from a pure roster building perspective, for so long they overvalued contact and putting the ball in play and all that, and they said that it was because they had to for the ballpark. A more normal, neutral ballpark offensively will allow them to more there's a better reason for them to value on-base percentage, getting on base, and power, and that translates to other ballparks, and I think would result in them not having necessarily the team that we saw in like 2024, which was unbelievably good at home and average on the road. If they can be a better team all around, that's a positive.
Yeah, I guess one final closing thought I would have on this is this is kind of a move for the Royals to be more in line with the rest of the stadiums and the rest of the ballparks in Major League Baseball. But I want to remind fans, the Royals' 2 World Series trophies, they won with speed, defense, and a big ballpark. I mean, you got to think about how do you assemble a good team in the world of baseball, and often times, like if you look at, like, let's say a team like the Dodgers, a team like the Yankees, a team like the Red Sox, these are teams that spend a lot of money because offense, run production, home runs are very, very expensive things. And with the way that the Royals are set up, the Royals are not going to be able to pay top dollar for offense. That's just not what they're going to have to do. So they're going to have to find a different way to win baseball games. And we saw in the past when they won the World Series that it was about speed, defense, and contact hitting. Now the Royals are trying to come more in line with the rest of the league, which obviously will change the players that they go after, but those players will be more expensive because they'll have more of those counting stats. But hey, whatever. We're going to have to see what happens. We'll see. That's what it's all about. The Royals
an experiment.
They have an MVP candidate in Bobby Witt Jr. I think they have the best left side of an infield in all of baseball with Bobby Witt Jr., Maikel Garcia. I mean, Vinny Pasquantino is a tremendous player. Salvador Perez, Jack Caglione, if he can take a leap. A lot of good players there in the field, and then obviously an elite pitching staff with the starting rotation and the bullpen. But hey, guys, we got a lot more to talk about than just baseball today. The University of Kansas Jayhawks have a big-time matchup today at Allen Fieldhouse. Unranked Kansas is hosting number 2 Iowa State. It's the first time an unranked Kansas Jayhawks team has hosted a top 5 team at Allen Fieldhouse since 1989. 36 years ago was the last time something like this happened. Gabe, right now KU 1-2 in conference play for the first time in 20 years, and big danger of falling to 1-3. Iowa State favored tonight at Allen Fieldhouse. You don't often see that. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
I think it's going to be close. It was close the last 2 times that last year KU handled Iowa State in a game where I think people were starting to sense some worry about the KU team, and they answered it by beating an Iowa State team that went to the second weekend pretty handily. But in 2022 and 2023, KU beat Iowa State by 2 and by 1 at home, and that was despite having better teams. So I think that you can say that TJ Otzelberger is one of the coaches in the Big 12, one of the best coaches in the Big 12, and is a coach that has often had answers for what Bill Self has wanted to do. And that's even when KU had a national championship winning team in 2022 and a team that went and got a 1 seed in 2023. So this is a team that went to Purdue earlier this year and beat them by double digits. And that is, if you ask college basketball people, the toughest places to play in the country. It's KU, it's Purdue, it's Duke, it's these tough environments. So the idea that Iowa State is just going to be scared by Allen Fieldhouse, I don't necessarily subscribe to. But I think that this could be, sometimes the best games at like Arrowhead Stadium are when the fan base is fired up and like there's a little anger to them. And I think of specifically like the Monday Night Football game where Chris Jones had the roughing the passer on Derek Carr, and people just lost their minds because it was such a soft call. And from that point on, it was like an angry Arrowhead, and fired up Patrick Mahomes, fired up Chris Jones, fired up Travis Kelce, got it all done. KU, I'm interested to see what it looks like from a crowd standpoint tonight. Not about like whether they fill the place or not. It's going to be packed. Mm-hmm. But what does an angry and fired up Allen Fieldhouse look like for a game where they're not anticipated to win? The last 2 times, the only 2 times we've ever seen it with Bill Self, home underdog. Houston 2 years ago, they won by 8, and Baylor during the COVID-impacted 2021 season, where limited capacity, team that went on and won the national championship, and KU won that game by 13. So I fully believe that Iowa State is better than KU. But I also think that KU is going to win tonight.
See, this is why I love when Gabe's on this program, because you just referenced a betting line from 2 years ago and one from 4 years ago, and he had the winning result to the number. That's why we bring Gabe Swartz on, because he knows his stuff. But it's going to be interesting to see. I like what you said there about Iowa State's schedule. Right now, they're undefeated. I believe 16-0, yep. 17-0, 16-0. And when they went to Purdue, they won that one 81-58. And at the time, Purdue was the number 1 ranked team in the country. This Iowa State team is nothing to mess around with. And yesterday, KU head coach Bill Self had his media availability before tonight's game. He said this is the best team that TJ Otzelberger has had at Iowa State. But Gabe, just like you, I'm excited to see how the KU fan base comes out and kind of attacks this game tonight, because 1-2 in conference play is just not where this fan base expected to be. I know here in this building we have a lot of KU fans, a lot of KU alums, and when I talk to them, it's almost like they're just in absolute shock as to what's going on. Like they don't know what's going on with Darren Peterson. I don't think the University of Kansas really knows what's going on with Darren Peterson, but I think the good news is he has played in all the conference games, and over his last 3 games, even though he has dealt with cramps, in his last 2 he's played more than 30 in both, and he's averaging 27 points per game in Big 12 play. So it's like the guy can't necessarily get on the floor, but boy, when he does, he is unbelievable. But Gabe, it seems like Darren Peterson's a pretty good lock to play 25 minutes tonight. I think in the last 2 games he's played more than 30. Yeah. How do you think, though, his reception will be at Allen Fieldhouse? Because the fans are very frustrated with this.
I think that it ultimately doesn't matter as long as they're winning. And like that's the thing is I was watching with a bunch of KU alums during the UCF game a couple weeks ago, and I was at a sports bar, and just the general like sentiment in the room when he's filling it up and putting in 3 after 3 after 3 is people like, man, this kid is so good. And then he exits the game in the second half, and the rest of the team doesn't respond, and they fall apart and they lose, and people are like, I'm so sick of it. So it really is like this is not this is the crux of sports fandom. It is not the love is unfortunately reciprocated based on the results oftentimes. And I think that is probably going to be the story of the Darren Peterson time at KU, is barring the cramps magically disappearing at some point, or them getting a better handle on how to manage it, or the rest of the team evolving, Flory playing better, Bryson Tiller playing better, Melvin Council fitting in with him. I thought that Melvin Council fit in with Darren a lot better for the first 30 minutes in Morgantown on Saturday when they were up 8. Unless all of that gets figured out, the fan base is always going to be frustrated and look at this season as like a, man, he's going to go be an all-NBA guy, be a potential MVP candidate, number 1 overall pick, all of these things that he's projected to be. And I think people will look back and be like, it's kind of just like the Embiid situation. Like, we had an awesome player at KU, and it didn't result in anything more than a year with Frank Mason or Devontae Graham did. And that's honestly kind of the beauty of college basketball, is that it's not the NBA, and the top level guy doesn't always win. Cooper Flagg and Duke they didn't win last year. Instead, it's guys who go in the late first round, second round, who won for Florida. And so you need NBA talent, but just because you have that guy does not mean that you win. And we'll see if it means that you win tonight, because they're going up against several awesome college basketball players in like Tamin Lipsey, who plays for Iowa State, baller, probably not a 10-year NBA guy unless something crazy happens. But that's what makes college basketball fascinating, and what I love about college basketball, honestly.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting one out there in Lawrence. Tip-off for that one is 8 p.m. at Allen Fieldhouse. And I think KU, I hope I'm not wanting this to be true rather than thinking is what I actually think. But I think KU could stick with them, because when KU, at least this year, they really have played to the level of their opponent. Like, they were in there with Duke. They were in there with UConn till the end. I mean, there have been games against very good teams that they've played very well. So we'll see kind of what happens today. Obviously, against maybe their toughest game that they've played here in the Big 12 slate so far. But we have one last topic to talk about today, because Andy Reid, right here in Kansas City, Big Red, is now the longest tenured head coach in the NFL. He actually started the season as the 3rd longest, but we've seen 2 guys leave their positions in the AFC North. John Harbaugh, no longer the head coach of the Ravens, and then today, Steelers longtime head coach Mike Tomlin spent 19 years out there in the Steel City, announced that he is stepping down as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Gabe, to me, I know obviously the Steelers over the last couple of years, it's really been rough ever since maybe the Ben Roethlisberger era. They really have not been able to find a quarterback, but still they've been able to stay above 500. They've been able to make playoff runs. It seems to me, though, at least with Harbaugh and Tomlin there in the AFC North, that those journeys may have reached their completion. Is that kind of your read of that situation?
Seems like it. And I think that the thing that Chiefs fans have to keep an eye on after a year where they go 6-11 is what does something being stale in the NFL look like, and what does ownership's willingness to put up with it look like? For the Steelers, you can say it was a decade of competent football, but truly incompetent playoff football. Like, the last 7 Steelers losses in the playoffs, their average margin of defeat has been 13.7 points, which is a 2-touchdown deficit, essentially. Like, they've just gotten run out of the building more often than not. The Ravens, I think they got to a point where, yes, John Harbaugh is an awesome coach. Yes, he had success. He won a Super Bowl with them. He didn't win a Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson. And I think ultimately they made the decision that they had to find someone else to maximize Lamar Jackson and maximize the next 5 to 6 years of Lamar Jackson, whatever you can get out of him before his physical peak declines. We've already seen the injuries rack up, but I think that's one of the most interesting things about 2026 and the 2026 NFL season for the Chiefs, with Andy Reid being the longest tenured head coach. The next longest tenured guys are Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan, who really look like they have a pulse on the league offensively or a pulse on the league defensively as to what defenses are trying to do and what to do to combat it. We saw that this weekend with the Niners beating the Eagles, and we saw it with the Rams beating the Panthers. there is such the Ravens are making a move because they want to win one Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson. The Chiefs, if they want to win extra Super Bowls, they've already gotten 3 in this era. I think Patrick Mahomes is such a psychotic competitor that he's not just going to be okay with them just burning through years of the middle of his career in 6-11 fashion in futility. So next year is huge for this in terms of whether Andy Reid continues to struggle and they're a very average offense when Patrick Mahomes is healthy, or if they get answers and they get back to being one of the top offenses in the NFL that they were for so long. Because otherwise, you might have to speed run it. You don't necessarily allow yourself to run off multiple years of the same issue in the way that the Ravens and the Steelers did. But I think that that's something that the Chiefs, it's the harsh reality, is that you maybe you're not allowed the same leash because your standard is so high.
Yeah, well, I think this would probably be our parting thought here, and I love that you just said this because I never thought about it. But it really does apply to both Harbaugh's situation there in Baltimore and Tomlin's situation in Pittsburgh. That is what it looks like when you have a tremendous head coach, a tremendous organization that goes stale. I like that really is sitting with me right now. And I hope maybe Kansas City, obviously right now, I mean, there's potential for big staff upheaval. Offensive coordinator Matt Nagy no longer in a contract. Defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo taking some interviews for a potential head coach. The Chiefs, if they want to remain on the cutting edge, if they want to remain innovative in the world of football, you cannot stay the same. And I know Andy Reid, for many times in his career, has continued to find ways to get guys open and maybe find new ways to. There's more than one way to skin a cat, but I hope maybe now. When he's seeing some of these long-tenured guys, because that's what the Chiefs really respect. They respect longevity. They respect success in the NFL. Now, these are 2 guys. They were the 2 longest-tenured head coaches in the NFL, and those journeys ran their course. So hopefully maybe Andy Reid and the Chiefs organization can kind of look around and say, hey, guys, just as Gabe said, we can't become stale. Like, we have Patrick Mahomes. We have a finite window, and we want to stay on the cutting edge. We might have to reinvent ourselves. But that's the world in the NFL. Like, you can do everything you can. You can win Super Bowls, and then the next day you can be getting run out of town. But hopefully that's not what happens here in Kansas City. Hopefully their Chiefs Super Bowl window is open for many, many years to come. But that is a look at sports here on this Tuesday night, unless there's anything else we left out there, Gabe.
I would just say, not only is Andy Reid the longest tenured head coach in the NFL, he is now, by age, 5 years older than any other head coach in the NFL. So
it certainly is not an old man's game anymore. As we have seen, these head coaches are getting younger and younger as everyone is trying to find that hotshot play caller. But hey, our hotshot play caller right here in Kansas City is the oldest coach in the NFL by 5 years, and we have all the trust in the world in him. All right, so that's a look at sports here on this Tuesday night. Be sure to stick with us at 6 and 10 p.m. as we go over the Royals moving in the fences and also KU's big game at Iowa State. All right, take care, guys.